So my clients, it's part of their workflow that once a week, on the same day every week, that they get into a routine of checking their bank feeds or their connections, if you will, both in HubDoc and in QBO. Because the pain point for a lot of people is that the connections go down. Well, the solve on that is make it a part of somebody else's routine, not yours, because we very often don't have the login information for our clients. Engage the client and make the pain point solved by them. And I have no pushback from my clients on checking once a week because they get to see what's going on in their bank accounts then too. So it's the same with QBO or Sage or anybody who's Stage 1, anybody who's got some of these bank connections, well, make sure they're running.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a great one. Our guest is a cloud accounting specialist who runs Calm Waters Cloud Accounting and loves her fintech. Recently, she appeared on our radar in our Successful Bookkeeper Facebook group, where she provided a useful resource that subscribed how members could use HubDoc and Receipt Bank together, which created a storm of a conversation. Kellie Parks, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. Well, first off, Kellie, for those that may have not met you or didn't chime in on that conversation in Facebook, tell us a little bit about your career background and how you became who you are today.
Okay. Well, I had a marketing and branding company, and I had a lousy bookkeeper. So I started doing my own books with the help of my accountant, who was my cousin. So he was a patient teacher for me. And as time rolled on, I really, really enjoyed it. And I was winding down my marketing company, and my cousin accountant that I was working with asked if I could help him out with other client books. And then eventually I sold off that business, which was a very technology-based business as well. So I've been big into technology for well over 30 years. And then I started doing more and more books, and then I joined a certification program, and then I got certified in all kinds of cloud financial technology programs as well, such as HubDoc and Receipt Bank and QBO and Practice Ignition. So I just love this stuff.
Beautiful. And why do you think it is that you came to fall in love with technology?
When I was in the marketing business, print production had its own big technology disruption, and this was almost 30 years ago. So we had disruptions in a number of ways. We had disruptions in the way that we managed our file sharing and our proofing. So I'm not sure if anybody has heard of FTP sites, but we started using FTP sites. We dropped using film, and we went to direct to plate, which caused all kinds of problems with our proofing process. FTP sites, of course, went down, and we were starting to rely on them more and more to get our real-time files, so the files weren't in real time. And we, InDesign, came and took over some of the programs that we had already been using. I had been in the industry so long, I remember when we were using the little metal letters and tweezers to get stuff done. At any rate, as more of this technology came out, I really like it. There was big disruption. It was a pain in the butt. I'm seeing so many parallels right now. But there was something about it for me that was just straight up fun. I don't know why I like technology. I live in a 100-year-old cabin that I'm renovating, and it's a bit of a wreck. But I smart homed the whole house just for fun. And that's a whole technology-based thing. So I basically just gig out on this stuff.
Wow. Yeah, I love it. I think we're both have some common threads there. I love technology myself. And
yeah, if I could add one thing, technology has freed me up. My kids are older, and my husband is seasonal. He's a fly fishing guide. So the technology, aside from all the great things it's doing for my clients, has allowed me to basically spend my winter not in Canada. I travel most of the winter, and technology has certainly freed that up for me to do that, and it's been seamless for my clients.
It's beautiful. It really is. I mean, we live in an age where there is no reason you have to be in any particular spot, with the exception of having at least a temporary connection to broadband or some form of internet.
Right.
But with that, go anywhere. And that, I think that's appealing for many people. And for some people, it might not be so appealing because it seems daunting or difficult or just a big mountain to climb. And so hopefully today, in this episode, we can help bring more freedom to those that want more freedom and bring some more certainty for those that feel a bit daunted by all of this.
Yeah. And, the other thing that I find with it, Michael, is that it's just kind of fun. It adds another fun factor to it. The world isn't going to end if you make a mistake in HubDoc or QBO. You can void some transactions, make some notes on what happened, take a learning experience away from it, and off you go.
Absolutely. And I like the context of fun. Everybody can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do some fun today and work on some technology improvements in our business or in your business. And we had Joe Whittard actually on a previous podcast, and he talked about essentially freeing up space in your practice to enable you to do something, whether it's harmony for your life, giving you more time to spend with your loved ones, or use that time, that freed up time, to improve processes, bring efficiencies like technology, streamlining like workflow and business systems and process and all that good stuff that then give you the ability to scale and do more and more, which I think today we're going to tackle this more with you, which is great. So we've already got, our listeners are like hungry for this freed up time and some more freedom and some more profitability and efficiency. So we talked about the resource that you provided to the Successful Bookkeeper group, Facebook group. What prompted you to create and pass that along to your fellow bookkeepers?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the great things about technology also is the collaboration it has allowed for bookkeepers. We are helping each other more and more, and accountants. I am finding bookkeepers and accountants are working more hand in hand. The whole thing is more collaborative. And on that note, when someone else has a great process that they're using, they're so willing to share it. It is so terrific. And so I am a huge fan of HubDoc, and I've been using HubDoc pretty much since the product came along. I think I was super early in on it. And I was kind of like everybody else. Why would I need Receipt Bank? It's going to go solve one of my biggest pain points, which is getting the bank statements, and solve the big pain point for my clients, and that is they don't want to go to all of these sites. They don't want to get their hydro bill and their bank statements and all of this stuff. They want something to do that for them. And along with technology comes needing to manage it as well. So I hear all the time that people are concerned about the fetch with HubDoc, that the bank connections break. Well, yeah, if you change your card number, or if there's a glitch in the bank site or security protocol changes, you're going to have a problem with that. But more often than not, it's awesome, and you got all the bank statements there. So anyways, I'm getting off on a tangent. But
I like this tangent, though. I think it's speaking to the problem it solves. Well, it's speaking to a couple things. It's speaking to the problem that it solves, the benefit that that problem being solved gives. Like, really, we're talking about freeing up the clients, right? I use HubDoc, and I would be considered more a client, right? Because I'm not doing, I first got into HubDoc early on as well. And for me, it was like heaven. I mean,
when I do technology training, so I don't have that many clients. I got a fairly small practice. So I did a ton of upfront training with my clients. And I do training for accounting firms and bookkeepers and that as well, to bring their clients to this technology. And it is amazing. It is such a big win for me. When I show them HubDoc, and those bank statements and Hydro statements and Bell and Rogers and everybody starts flowing in, it's always a great moment. They're always amazed. But then I have to remind them. So my clients, it's part of their workflow. My clients have their own little workflow checklist, and it's part of their workflow that once a week, on the same day every week, that they get into a routine of checking their bank feeds, both, or the connections, if you will, both in HubDoc and in QBO. Because one of the big points is those feeds go down, and some of the banks don't allow fetching of transactions after, I think it's a 10-day window or something for a couple of the banks. So the pain point for a lot of people is that the connections go down. Well, the solve on that is make it a part of somebody else's routine, not yours, because we very often don't have the login information for our clients. Engage the client and make the pain point solved by them. And exactly. I have no pushback from my clients on checking once a week because they get to see what's going on in their bank accounts then too. So it's the same with QBO or Sage or anybody who's Stage 1, anybody who's got some of these bank connections, well, make sure they're running.
That goes with any technology. I mean, it's going to give freedom. It's going to give improvements of time, and it's going to free up all sorts of time. But there's a comedian, and now the name slips my mind, but it'll come to me. Anyways, the joke is about sitting on an airplane and somebody's complaining that the Wi-Fi connection's not working, and it's like, hey, first of all, you're traveling through the air, right?
Yeah.
And you're like connecting to like the internet signal and bringing up all this data, and it's like you're complaining because you can't get access to Wi-Fi. And so we forget, so easily we forget what it was like even 5 years ago.
Right.
And that's what I love what you're doing is you're saying, look, this thing's going to break, but the breaking is going to be a tiny little grain of sand compared to the massive beach of beauty and improvement that you're going to get. And it is that. And so system process, making sure that you go back in and check on these things, but you're excited because your client sees it and they love it. I mean, HubDocs is a great thing to bring to a client. And I mean, if they've never heard of it before and you're the one that brings it, I mean, they'll never forget you. You're always going to have that little place in their life, in their mind where they're like, oh, just thank you so much for that. And I feel that way about Jamie over at HubDoc, who showed me HubDocs and I started using it. I mean, it has saved me so much time. And for years, I actually just used it very, very minimally. Like it was just, okay, go fetch all these things. But now every single purchase that I do, I take a picture of that receipt and I email it directly to HubDoc and I delete the receipt or crumple up the receipt. And then eventually I delete all those photos. And that in itself, like from a paperless standpoint, beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
It's magic. It's absolutely magic. You know, what the Jamies created is terrific. The first time I saw it at the IPBC conference, I was like, are you kidding me? And like I said, even if the connections go down, my clients are in charge of managing their own connection. They would rather fix that connection than have to deal with going to their bank site, which also has connection problems, and download the statements. Fixing it in HubDoc takes them a heck of a lot less time than managing their actual online banking site.
Yeah. And as well, I use Royal Bank, and it's just one of the many banks that they deal with. But some of the information that comes through is not available to me if I were just doing information about what that account transfer was, email transfers, checks being in HubDoc. Right. I mean, it's like, listen, there's no other way to get that kind of data. Now, there might be some magical way that I have to travel through mountains and deserts to get it through Royal Bank. But, you know, you're taking a technology company that's disrupting, and then they're trying to make the best of these old curmudgeons over at the banks and their old outdated systems, and they're making the very best of it. So when it breaks a little bit on the HubDoc side, it's not the HubDoc likely, it's more the bank that's messing that up. And thankfully, HubDoc's been able to make a pretty darn good, I mean, it's been 4 years, a little bit more than 4 years that I've been using it. And it's very, very rare do I have any issues. Yeah, I got to change this or that, but it's usually my fault because I changed a password or something changed. Right. just as you said, right? So
it takes 2 seconds. And you know what? If I could also mention the filing system. So when we're talking about using apps together, so HubDoc, their filing system is super visible. Their dashboard could use some work. And if Jamie McDonald hears this, he knows that Jamie Shulman and I run around with placards practically hoping for a dashboard, but it's coming. They're working on it, but they're filing. But, I say to them, hey, but don't do anything with that filing system because it's so visible. When you click on the folder, you can see the images right away.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Receipt Bank, one of the reasons that I use them hand in hand, Receipt Bank has this terrific dashboard with all kinds of other features that hopefully we'll have a chance to get into. But the beautiful thing about Receipt Bank is it archives things so you know what you've dealt with and they've gone away. But then you got to search for them it's a 4-click operation to look at an image that you want to see. So HubDoc has this great folder system that the visibility is so high level. You just go into a folder and all you have to do is click through them. The images sit right there. You don't actually have to look for an archived thing and then click on it to open it and do a dance and a jig. It's an awesome, I call it the filing cabinet on steroids because it goes down and gets things for you.
Well, you also called it the chocolate and peanut butter of fintech apps. So why is that?
Well, because they're great together. So now, if I can go back to this collaborative world. So I had some friends who had been bugging me for quite a long time about how great Receipt Bank was. But I was like, oh no, then I got to pay for it. And I don't know I know it doesn't fetch and yakety yak yak. But then I realized I love restaurants. I got a couple of restaurants. But the few that I already had, they were managing their own receipts in HubDoc. They were publishing everything. So I didn't quite get the pain point. And then my other clients, I had to basically look at every receipt anyways. So then I could just hit publish because I already had the presets, but I needed to look at them. Then I got this restaurant that had just an absolute ton of receipts with weird tax consequences because it was food with small wares mixed in. So it was never 13% of the total bill. They would come in, there would be like 100 from Flanagan's a month. And then I was doing a cleanup file for a construction company where all of the HubDoc stuff was going to be supplies and materials, cost of goods sold. And I'm like, wow, if I could just batch publish these, because I don't really have to look at them. The client is going to take the responsibility for the fact that these things are cost of goods sold. He and I made an agreement in the restaurant. It's fairly obvious that food purchases and paper goods are cost of goods sold. So I took another look because my girlfriends had been yakking on about how awesome publishing was in Receipt Bank. And I did a trial because you kind of have to sort out the pricing. So I found a pricing level that I thought was going to work for what I was going to do. And I realized that this was an absolutely magic combination. It is like chocolate and peanut butter. The first time you eat a Reese's peanut butter cup, it's like, oh my. Well, the first time I published over all of these receipts in a batch, I was like, well, the price isn't an issue anymore because I just saved hours. So, because in Receipt Bank, and I'm sorry if I'm getting off on,
this is
willy-nilly of using the product.
No, we like this.
In HubDoc does so many fantastic things up front. It's the back end that's a little bit dodgy. You got to do the whole tax extraction thing, and you have to publish your receipts one at a time, and you can't sort them by any sort of filter. Yes, don't get me wrong. Things are always in the works with the Jamies. And so in Receipt Bank, you've got this full dashboard where you can sort by vendor, you can sort by date to make sure you're not going to publish old ones over, although it's tough to because it doesn't let you. You can sort by what it is. So let's say you only want to send over the cost of goods sold, and then you want to deal with, office expenses afterwards, whatever the case may be. You can sort. I think there's a 6-filter sort option in there. It operates very, very similar to the QBO bank feed in that you can sort it by all these different criteria to kind of publish or match in the order that's going to make the most sense for you. And then you can also, in Receipt Bank, you can also look very easily individually. So you can forward through the receipts, and they'll just keep populating and popping up with the image. So I'm not saying when I put over to Receipt Bank that I don't look at any of them, but if there's, let's say it's, I don't know, let's say it's Staples and it's underneath the threshold for whatever their fixed assets are, well, we know those are office expenses. You can just batch them up and send them all over. But if I want to look at something that's like $650, I can take a look and see if it's 4 items or if it's actually going to be a fixed asset.
Wow. So it's saving you a lot of time. And how did you come about, actually making them work together?
Well, that is something that I heard about from a number of people. So there's I call them APIAs. They're accounting professionals I admire. So a few of them had told me about the Receipt Bank all on its own. They're big Receipt Bank fans. But then on the other end, I had a friend, Sherry Lee, who's also an IPBC member, and she was using them together. And so I looked at how she was using, and I have another friend who was using them the opposite. She uses Receipt Bank for client facing and HubDoc at the back end. So everybody's got a little bit different way that they do it. So when I saw how Sherry Lee was using Receipt Bank, because she was using it in the same order, HubDoc to Receipt Bank, I was like, wow, that's really cool. But what if I made a few tweaks and did it just this slightly bit differently? So again, it was that collaborating sort of environment we have. Did Beautiful. I just answer the question there?
You did. And I'm curious now, how this affects on the client side. Do they see both? Do they have to work with both, or what does that look like?
No. And this is where some of us are a little bit different. I have my clients on HubDoc because I find that they can find things in the folder system a little differently. We tag like crazy in there. Tagging is very visible in HubDoc. So if somebody puts a receipt in, not only can they add a note, but they can tag it to a topic, or for me specifically to look at, or I can tag it and say, yeah, I don't think this is going to fly. This doesn't look compliant. So we use tags like crazy. And as I mentioned before, my clients are in charge of their own connection. So if HubDoc isn't a client-facing app, you are burdened with fixing their connection. And for them, it's going to take 2 seconds. For you, you've got to connect with the client and then find the stuff and then tell them, forget about it. So I use HubDoc as client-facing. And Receipt Bank, they know that I use it because I feel obligated that anything that's in a cloud, anything that's out there in the world that has their documentation, they should know that it exists, but they don't have to know how to use Receipt Bank. I'm not going to app my clients out, if you will.
Yeah, I was just going to say that would be challenging, right? Because they're not so interested in how things are getting done. They just want to know that they've gotten done, and you want to not confuse them because they're often the people that you're working with are very busy. And so if it's like, oh, we'll use this, that, and other thing, and then over here, you got to go over there. I mean, you just go in the opposite direction.
You don't want to scare them, right?
Yeah.
Now, I will say, so in the Successful Bookkeeper and also in the Workflow Watering Hole, there is a DAC, PDF, if you will, of how to use HubDoc to Receipt Bank. And in QBHQ, there is how to use Receipt Bank to HubDoc files. So depending on which app you want client-facing, there are PDFs on how to use these in both directions.
Yeah, and we can put links up for those PDFs in the show notes if people would like to get access to those, and other links that we've been talking about. So we've been talking primarily about HubDoc and Receipt Bank. Are there other financial awesomeness apps out there that you've used and that you're seeing becoming as great as HubDoc and Receipt Bank?
Yeah, I love Pluto. Pluto is awesome. My clients love Pluto. So Pluto is a payment platform that syncs up with the accounting programs as well. So my workflow or order of events, if you will, starts with HubDoc, and then in the case that it's applicable, it goes to Receipt Bank, it goes into QBO. I'm a QBO user, just so that everybody knows. So I get that slant on it. And then it goes into, and then Pluto has all of that information. And then you can mass pay bills from there. So rather than spending your day slugging it out, individually paying bills and then printing the checks and then getting them to the client who's going to envelope them and stamp them and mail them out, my clients love Pluto. I do all of their payables for them, and it takes me no time. It's not turned into a huge part of our engagement. I click through them, and you can sort in Pluto by date, vendor, all of that amount, whatever you want to filter out how those payments are going to look. And then a notice goes out to the client, an email goes out. They approve what they want to pay, or maybe they got a discussion going with a supplier that I didn't know about, then they reject that one. And then the payments go merrily on their way, and the supplier gets a notice that payment is on its way. So you're not fielding the phone calls of, hey, when are you paying me?
It's beautiful.
So smooth, and it is. It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, it's. I use Pluto as well. It really is just simple.
Yeah, it's terrific. And it's funny because I had a few clients, they were reluctant. There is comfort in signing checks and looking at them, and you feel a little bit in control. So there was a little more pushback on Pluto, certainly, than there was on going paperless at the front end. And as they started using it, it didn't take long before they were more than happy to give up control, because they realized they even had more control when they could see the payments, what was happening. It was more visible. They felt more in control, not actually spending the time signing those checks.
Yeah, and just the visibility for both parties. Yeah. I mean, I think Pluto, the number one word that comes to my mind is visibility, right? It's like everybody can see what's going on, where it's going, and it takes a lot of the, if you were going to be paying, writing a check for somebody as an agent, if you will, of another company, I mean, that's putting a lot of responsibility on you as the bookkeeper, and it's a lot of responsibility that's being given up by the owner, right? Access to bank accounts, all these different things. Whereas this, it's a bridge that gives you the ability to action something, a payment, and then all somebody has to do is say, yep, good, 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 or hey, no. And then the client can see it coming at them. I mean, it really is. Right. It's a disruptor, big time disruptor.
Now, I will say there are a couple of great payment apps that have come along lately too. So I know that some of the APIs that I know, they are starting to love some of the other ones. I am sticking with Pluto. I love Pluto. But whatever, pick one of these payment processing apps and get on with that. That is a huge one.
Yeah, I agree. So payment, what else? What else are you using?
I use workflow management. I'm not, anybody who's listening to the podcast who may know me may know that I am totally a workflow freak. So I use 17 Hats for my workflow and CRM. I also use QBOA. The dashboard of QBOA has a ton of information, and it's a great CRM. You can put so much information into the QBOA to track what's going on with your clients. It's awesome. But 17 Hats for me is a huge win. The workflow is completely fantastic. Everything is organized by projects. So my clients' bookkeeping for the year is in a project folder, if you will, and the emails are there. The notes are there, quotes, questionnaires, contracts. Everything is in one place. There is a client portal as well for anything created in 17 Hats. But I use QBOA shared documents for my secure document sharing. Very cool. So those two programs, QBOA and 17 Hats. 17 Hats, you can embed all of the emails right in the workflow. So you're not even jumping out of your workflow to go find an email to send. It's actually partway through the order is the email you actually need to send out. And my clients get in the beginning, or if they start to fall off the document wagon, if you will, they get a Monday morning reminder telling them to refresh their HubDoc and QBO bank feeds, connections, whatever you want. and to get their documents, their receipts into HubDoc. And that goes out every Monday morning. I don't even have to think about it.
Beautiful. Well, you have just absolutely blown, I think, everybody's mind with some peanut butter and chocolate delicious fintech apps, payment apps, workflow apps, all sorts of great stuff. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast, Kellie.
Oh, Michael, it's been great to be here. If I could take away somebody's, if you will, workflow or efficiency pain and just give them back that time to do whatever else they want, I will talk about this stuff all day.
Beautiful.
So it's been great being here. Thank you.
Awesome. And if people want to connect with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Facebook. They could email me. If I can take a phone call, I'll take a phone call in a moment. But Facebook is a great platform. I have a group. It's called the Workflow Watering Hole. And one of the other groups I recommended, and it was the Successful Bookkeeper. Because as you know, I love playing around in there. But Facebook is probably the best way. You can send me a Facebook message, and that's what I use for non-client-based kind of accounting professional point of contact.
That's great. Well, listen, I recommend everyone listening, go to the Successful Bookkeeper Facebook group, search Kellie, thank her for being on the show. And if you have more questions about HubDoc and Receipt Bank or any of these fintech apps or workflow, ask Kellie, and I'm sure she'll generously help you out and help you get where you're trying to get to.
If I could jump in for 2 seconds. What I love is if somebody posts a question, tag me in on it, but post the question in some of these groups, because if you have a question, I bet you there's lots of people with the same question. So hesitate on PMing me if you think that somebody else is suffering from the same sort of pain point as you are. Put a public post up, tag me in it, and I'm happy to jump in.
Beautiful. So generous, Kellie, and it's been fantastic. Would love to have you back in the future to get some updates on what you're loving in the fintech world. And we'll say goodbye until next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, that wraps another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.